Good morning. Live from the campus of the United States Sports Academy in Daphne, Alabama. This is Sports Talk, our usual Wednesday morning broadcast from the United States Sports Academy, in which we discuss some of the relevant issues and the current issues in sport. Today, our guest is Dr. Stephen Butler, who is a longtime devotee and scholar of baseball. And one of the things we're going to discuss today is how baseball is changing. Will Major League Baseball change the pace of play in 2015? This has been a topic of a lot of discussions, and we're just about ready to begin the Major League Baseball season. So, pace of play changing, its intent is to speed up the game, because a lot of people felt as though the game had become very, very slow. So, today we're going to take a closer look at that. Some of the things first. You know that for the past few years, Steve, that people have been complaining about the speed of play. And then this year, the new commissioner, Rob Manfred, talked about we're going to make some changes. Some of those changes include mandating that managers stay in the dugout during replay challenges, hitters keep at least 1 foot in the batter's box during at-bats, and a prompt return to play after TV commercial breaks, and also timed pitches. In addition, there will be Major League Baseball countdown timers, 2 minutes 45 seconds for nationally televised games, and 2 minutes and 25 seconds for local broadcasts. And there will be a system of warnings and fines attendant with this to enforce these pace of play rules. But Steve, first, what do you think will be the upshot of all these new rules?
Well, I think for one thing that the pace of play does appear to be a little bit slow. I think that when I go to baseball games, the biggest thing I notice is the time between innings.
Right.
And that's one of the things they talked about. You know, I'm not a math major, but if you reduce the time between innings by 1 minute for each half inning, you're talking about 18 minutes for the game right there. And it's amazing how you can tell when you're at a game whether it's on television or not, just by the amount of time. So that's something they could work on, is the time between innings. I think once the players get used to it, you know, the one thing I don't like about the game is the guy who has to step out of the batter's box, undo both of his gloves, redo both of his gloves, you know, all that stuff that goes on between pitches. You know, there's always been a rule in baseball that if there's no runners on base, the pitcher has to throw the pitch within 20 seconds. I think if you just start enforcing that rule, that would help greatly. I think the replay has helped a lot because you know, there's not the arguments anymore. The manager just simply says, "I take another look at it," and they've actually added some more things that are eligible for replay this year. So I think that'll help. But I think one of the things I think is interesting is that, you know, we talk about the pace of play in baseball, yet football games last much longer time-wise, you know, up to 4 hours in some college games. And yet if you look at the actual time from snap to whistle, they play for less than 20 minutes.
Oh, yeah, I know.
So,
I know that, but it's just that the action that takes place when you have 11 on 11 and so forth, and usually a much larger crowd, it's a much more confined situation. And you don't really get those crowds in Major League Baseball until you get into the playoffs. I mean, if you take a look at what's happening on television, they have the replays at night, they're almost embarrassed to show you the long fly balls because you go out there in center field and the seats are empty. And so these are some of the things that I think they're taking a look at. But you mentioned about the batter who just his hat and his gloves and so forth. Well, one of the new rules, of course, is the batter has to keep his foot in the box at all times when he's hitting. So, and you had mentioned before, this has become a problem for Major League Baseball. Some of the things that they've done in basketball to speed the game up, there's a shot clock, and NBA as well, they've got shot clocks. And I just don't know, you know, when I was going to baseball games as a kid back in the 50s, and I lived down in Miami, and believe it or not, Satchel Paige was one of the players. Of course, the Miami Marlins, them were just a minor league, AAA team. Those games seem to move a lot faster. But now with all the strategies that the baseball managers and coaches use, the batters step in and out of the batter's box to try to rattle or tire the pitcher and so forth and so on. That kind of takes away from the action. And a lot of people like to see the action. So I think some of these changes, but do you think these changes are going to be enough?
I think they're a start. You know, this is the new commissioner's first real big issue that he's trying to deal with. I think he'll be more progressive than the previous commissioner. One of the things I find very interesting about this is historically baseball purists or traditionalists, whatever you want to call them, have really gone psycho when you talk about making changes to their beloved game of baseball.
Right.
And one of the great things about baseball has always been the fact that there is no clock. You know, literally, if you're the home team, if you don't make the last out, you don't lose. You can be down by 12 runs, and there's no time. You're not going to run out of time. You just run out of outs. So that's been one of the attractions of baseball. You know, you hear him say all the time that there is no clock. But then you get guys like Mike Hargrove, who is probably better known as a manager, but when he was a player, they used to call him the human rain delay,
right?
Because he took so long between pitches. And you know, if the umpire just say no, get in the box. And you know, a few times when the batter calls for timeout and the umpire doesn't grant it, or the batter requests timeout and the umpire doesn't grant it, and he throws a pitch and he calls it a ball or strike. I think once they get used to it, I think the play will be sped up. You know, they're only talking 12, 15 minutes a game.
Right.
So we'll see what happens.
Well, you mentioned the old guard. Reminds me of something. It's really quite an aside, but I think it's important here. Pete Rose admitted to gambling, and he's out of baseball forever. But all these guys who took PEDs and were hopped up on all this juice, they got a suspension here and a suspension there, and they're back in. There's something I think terribly inequitable there, but that's just an observation. When you said the old guard and so forth, yeah. I thought of that immediately because I know you love Pete Rose. Anybody likes baseball loves Charlie Hustle. But I have another question. Is the number of games that Major League Baseball teams play a factor in the overall interest, do you believe? What are they playing, 162 games now?
162.
Wow.
Plus there's they have the one-game playoff now, and then the divisional series, then the championship series, then the World Series.
Yeah.
So you could play, there could be what we talked about that last year, like 40-something possible playoff games if all the series goes 7 games. Yeah, in 1961 they changed from 154 games to 162, and of course that was the year Roger Maris hit 61 home runs, and Ford Frick, who was the commissioner at the time and a very good friend of Babe Ruth, actually wrote his biography, put that asterisk in there to say that Roger Maris needed 162 games to hit the 61 home runs, where Ruth only needed 154. But the asterisk is from Maris has since been removed.
Yeah.
But that there's some talk about that. They call it the dog days of summer when they get August, September. I think one of the things that has helped with the 2 wild cards in each league now is there's a lot more teams. It used to be, when we were growing up, you had the National League champion and the American League champion, and they played in the World Series. So, and of course, in the late 50s, early 60s, when the Yankees were dominating, usually the last month of the season was irrelevant. And, now at least there's a lot more teams involved to still have a chance to make the playoffs going down the stretch, so the games are more meaningful near the end of the season. And I think that's helped. But there's talk in NBA too of reducing the number of games.
Yeah, that was we had that as a topic just a couple of weeks ago. So maybe I don't know at what level does the public become totally saturated?
And I think the biggest obstacle to reduce the number of games is just the amount of money. Even you can watch TV sometimes and watch a baseball game, and then you look in the newspaper the next day and it say that the attendance was 34,600, whatever, and you think to yourself, man, a lot of those 34,000 people must have come dressed as green chairs. But what happens is with the season ticket holders and everything, those count as being there even when they're not.
Yeah, they count.
So the owners, with the parking and the concessions and everything, they're making lots of money each at each of their 81 home games. So I think the owners would be more reluctant to reduce this number of games in the schedule than the players.
I think it's the same way with the NBA. Plus now they have these humongous TV contracts. I mean, we're talking about billions of dollars of contracts. So that they really have no incentive. And there's been a discussion every so often about where they're going to reach the saturation point where there literally is 150 people in the stands because television is covering it so well. I don't know how many cameras they use now to cover a baseball game, but I would imagine it's, at least 20 to 24. And then that gives people sitting at home an option to, really, really enjoy the game. But we've got all these things that are designed to speed up the game, and I think they may work. And so what do you think? Do you think we're going to go in the direction of, one of the things I've always wondered is they now have a laser that checks the hockey puck as it goes across the line, and you'll see that red light light up. Wouldn't it be interesting if somehow or other they could do a two-dimensional laser box for the pitcher's box for the strike zone?
Well, they show it to you on television now.
Right.
I don't think we want to totally remove umpires from the game. I think one of the things that speeding up the game will do is that I think it will help greatly if the games get over earlier.
Right.
One of the big problems, and I've heard the new commissioner talk about this on the radio, is a lot of the kids can't watch the games because they're on so late.
Right.
In fact, I saw an article the other day where the Cleveland Indians are starting all their home games this year at 6:05 instead of 7:05, in the hopes that young people, if they do come to the games, will be able to stay for the entire game. And if they haven't been coming because it's so late, heck, when we were kids, almost all the games were played in the afternoon.
Right.
I mean, I can remember cutting a hole in the book and putting a little transistor radio in there to listen to the World Series while I was in school, and getting on my bicycle and riding home as fast as I could, maybe catch the last three innings of a World Series game. So it's it's changed a lot. When you and I were growing up, we had one game on Saturday afternoon.
That was it.
Dizzy Dean and Pee Wee Reese. And all the English teachers complaining that Dizzy Dean was destroying the language. So, but heck, even without any of the special packages, I have no special packages in my house, and I can probably watch 4 or 5 baseball games every day during the regular season.
Yeah, and that's courtesy of TNT and ESPN teaming up. The 3 major broadcasters, NBC, CBS, and ABC, really only pick them up later on when they have the playoffs or the World Series. And but TNT has come into play. And who else comes into play with the NBA? TNT and USA? No, not USA. Anyway.
With baseball, Fox gets involved.
Fox gets involved,
also.
Yeah. Fox gets involved in football too. Think about the number of sport channels there are today in any package, whether it's DirecTV or AT&T Uverse or even Dish for that matter. It's just amazing. At any rate, we're drawing to a close here again. We want to thank you all for tuning in, and thank you who've been sending in the suggestions to sporttalk@ussa.edu. We encourage that. And as a matter of fact, this topic was prompted by an email we received. So for Dr. Stephen Butler, our Dean of Academic Affairs, this is Dr. Arthur Ogden, the Chair of Sports Management, thanking you for tuning in and wishing you a great day in sport.
Have a great week.